everyone, welcome to another Animation Friday. Apologize this video had to be delayed. Unfortunately, I was pretty busy over this past weekend, so I'll have everything caught up though by the end of today. So without further ado, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about a recent animated film that came out that has sort of garnered a lot of attention, at least among, I think, the Pixar fan community, and is probably considered to be one of Pixar's new best. I would definitely say that this film is up in the quality as far as uh, other Pixar films go, at least the ones that have been released lately, because they sort of been in a little bit of a slump, at least right now. They haven't really produced a lot of hits, or at least films that I guess a lot of people have seemed to get a lot of praise uh, or genuine enjoyment, at least from the audience as well as critics. This one, again, seemed to gravitate to both and got a lot of attention and buzz. It's sort of, I think, still remains to be seen how Finding Dory does. From what I could have heard from that one, it does seem to have a lot of repetition within that film, but this one is, again, trying to sort of be the standout and kind of be unique as far as a Pixar film goes, and it definitely lives, I think, up to that reputation. And I think it's definitely safe to say that this is probably one of their better films that they've made as far as the 2010s are concerned. I don't think that I think when you look at Pixar's library, I think they were a lot stronger within their 2000s years, or at least the O's. They were a lot more popular and I guess a lot more recognizable, but now I think they're still having kind of difficulty trying to find their way, especially since Disney has sort of come back and tried to gander a little bit of that animation market as well. So, but this one is definitely a step in the right direction, I think, for Pixar, even though I don't think it's one of their greatest, and I don't think it's the same as something like Toy Story or like Finding Nemo or anything like that. But it's still, I think, worthy of recognition for a variety of reasons. But I just don't think it's as great as some are making out to be. But still solid. As definitely a step in the right direction for them. What I think works the best with this particular film, as far as trying to appeal to children, is its creativity. There's a lot of interestingly creative elements here that really drive the film and what make it really unique. And you usually don't see these kinds of animated films that really kind of push the envelope as far as what they can do, not only from an animation perspective, but also through sort of a visual storytelling perspective. And here it's done really well. And I think this is really the biggest factor into really selling this film, and also something that makes this film stand out from a lot of the other recent Pixar films that have kind of been really misses, at least for the most part. So it's definitely nice to see that that they are trying to push the envelope in that department, and I think that's definitely what stands out about this film. Now, in regards to what this film is about, it sort of has its kind of approach to it that, again, I think has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. So basically, we get the story of Riley, a little girl who sort of grows up with her parents, and basically what it follows is not necessarily Riley herself, more so the emotions that are inside her head. So we've got disgust, anger, fear, joy, and sadness. And they're sort of kind of running Riley's life. I mean, they pretty much are the kind of focus of this film, and they really showcase that within the beginning fairly well. But I think would have worked better to this film is that they showed a little bit more so of what it's like through the perspective of other people's not only emotions, but also sort of Riley herself. I didn't really get a sense that we really understood who Riley was as a character, especially when, she's kind of supposed to be the focal point and the intention of the emotions. We just know maybe a little bit, but we don't really get a real sense of who she really kind of is as a person. We just get a sense of what her emotions are, which is pretty much what everybody else has within themselves as well. So again, that's what I think makes it less. It doesn't grab as much of my interest, because I would be a lot more interested if they actually did more conversations involving Riley and another person, and seeing how she reacts to that, you know, and instead we have, again, the focus being more so on her emotions, and again, it has its advantages for what it is, but it still, I think, has a little bit of setbacks as well. So something happens though with these emotions, sort of within the beginning, and you'll sort of see what leads up to this happening. But basically, there is a problem that happens, and as a result, it's up in particular to joy and sadness, these two emotions, to basically kind of solve the problem that's sort of going on within Riley's mind. And I think, again, this approach is interesting because, again, you get a lot of creative elements from it, but I think it would have been nicer to see what it's like on the outside, like what Riley's experiencing on the outside, as opposed to just primarily focusing on what's really in her mind. And I'd just like to see that connection there. And I didn't really feel like that was really what the film was really going for, and I think that was a really missed opportunity there. So again, the focus is not only just on it's not only just on the emotions themselves, but in particular really two emotions that we really get the most time with, which is really joy and sadness. And you'll sort of see how sadness is kind of pushed off to the side, and the other emotions kind of don't want sadness to really have any kind of say really within Riley's mind. They want to kind of keep sadness at bay. But then you see sort of how eventually sadness is really the one who ultimately ends up helping Riley at the end. So again, this ultimately, everything that I'm expressing here is really more explained better, I would say, within the film, only because it is very visual in that sense. But again, I think what they have going for the ideas, I think on paper it just seems a lot more interesting from that vantage point than the way in which they executed it, because I think there could have been a lot more interactions with Riley going in the outside world and sort of seeing how this kind of collapses, how certain things, they show how certain things within her mind kind of collapse, but it's not expressed to the fullest extent that I think it could have. And I say this only because, again, we see more so what's going on in her mind, and not so much of what's triggering that within the outside world. And so it just kind of lacks a little bit of logic, I would say, I guess, in a way. But that's really the focus, though, within this film, is these emotions within her mind. And again, the emotions within themselves, although they're interesting, and again, they're not by any means horrible characters, they're not as the most in-depth. And again, they kind of are just there to just express those emotions, just to be sad and joyful, and, just be that kind of thing. I think that's what really doesn't, that's another thing that I think really doesn't, I think, work as well with this film compared to a lot of other Pixar films, where you do get the two characters in particular that stand out, but here you feel like these emotions are kind of a little bit phoned in, but they almost have to be, because they are emotions. They're supposed to have a sort of a dominant feeling. And so that's just something I think that's important to note. But really, that's the main idea behind everything. Now, again, like I said before, if you think that the whole emotional journey and just seeing it through the emotional lens, if you think that's really what sells the film, what you think really makes the film work so well, then you're going to obviously enjoy it. But if you would have preferred a little bit of more balance, I think you would have came off with the same impression that I had with this film, which was it was a really good film. It had a lot of good points and brought up a lot of interesting themes as far as how sadness in particular plays a role and within our emotions and how we shouldn't try to suppress that kind of emotion. But at the same time, not being able to see things through more so the outside, I think would have given a lot more of an emotional, it really would have allowed, I think, a lot for you to feel a lot more for Riley's character and feel a lot more for what's going on with her. Because we really don't see, we don't even really see what she ultimately says, like, really too much in the beginning of class, because she moves, and this ends up playing a significant role too within the plot by the fact that she and her family move somewhere else and she has to go to another school, and basically she sort of introduces herself in the beginning of school, and she kind of has a lot of, I guess, anxiety, and she kind of breaks down a little bit, but we don't really see how she breaks down. We just see her emotions kind of breaking down, but we don't really see like what's making her emotions kind of do this. And again, this is where I think the logic of this kind of it's just not there, at least a little bit, for me. And I think had there been more of a perspective of the emotions looking outward and as to what Riley's kind of experiencing, again, I think it would have been way more interesting. It would have resonated with me a lot more emotionally, and it would have left, I think, a deeper impact on me. I think the whole journey of of the emotion of joy and sadness kind of departing, is, I think, something within the plot that, again, it sort of deters that ability to, again, see it more so through Riley's perspective. But regardless, again, it has a lot of interesting and creative things to it. There's a lot of ingenuity as far as the animation is concerned, and it's definitely safe to say that I think Pixar really tried to put in some genuine effort within this film. Unlike some other films, unfortunately, that have been coming out lately from Pixar that haven't been as stellar or as impressive. And yeah, this one definitely picks up or at least leaves itself off with a good impression. I would just say that for my personal taste and for me to get emotionally invested into something like this more so, I think it would have been a lot more interesting to see things more so through Riley's perspective than just through these emotions. Even though the emotions are entertaining and they're fun to watch, just more character interactions through the outside world, I think would have lended itself a lot better. But that's just my honest thoughts, though. I'd be more than happy to hear what anybody else is saying as what they thought about this particular animated film. It's definitely, I think, a real huge step in the right direction for Pixar. I think they needed a film like this to get them sort of out of a little bit of a creative rut they've been in over these past years. I haven't really seen anything from theirs that has really stood out, and this one definitely is trying to push them into the positive direction, I would say so. And hopefully there will be more films like this that try to push the envelope and do some interesting and creative things with their animation and with their sort of storytelling. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say for this particular video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.